guys, again, it is Miles with Champion Garage, and in this video I am, upon request, I am filming a time-lapse on a Jeep TJ, and as you can see, I'm having to really study this out because I'm going to do both sides, and between my legs there, the green pieces on the ground is the Rust Buster repair kit for the Jeep TJ series, and from what I can tell, right here in this area where I'm giving it the thumbs down is the contaminated area for the rust problem. And as you can tell, well, you can't really see it very good in the video, but I'm blowing out a lot of rust, and it is so bad. Actually, I was driving this and the rear end broke free from the frame, and so I am going to have to take basically the four parallel arms apart. As you can see, I've got two of them hanging loose now. The parallel link arm on the driver's side actually broke loose while I was going down the road, and the passenger side really wasn't that bad, but these are a trouble point on the Jeep TJ. And so here I am taking apart the sway bar bolts, and I'll tell you, it was kind of a pain to get to on the passenger side because as you can see here, the exhaust is on that. Well, it's kind of hard to tell, but the exhaust is on that side, and so I had to do a lot of that by hand. I was getting stuff all over me. It was quite rusty under this Jeep. My friend here and I both thought the Jeep was in really good condition, and it is now. But at the time, we didn't know that the frame was this bad. So I'll tell you, if you're a Jeep TJ owner out there, my recommendations to you is to check these areas. If they're at all soft, I would highly recommend that you have this done. And that being said, this job here is not, and I repeat, not for the faint-hearted. You need to have pretty good welding skills as well as plasma cutting skills, because again, this is a very big safety item where the rear end does cut. So at this point, I just ground off a spot right there to make my grounding point for the TIG welder. This is a brand new TIG welder I actually just ordered. My last TIG welder failed. I'm kind of just trying it out here, getting things set, so I'm just cutting off the parallel link arm bracket just to try it, get used to it before I get to actually cutting on the frame. So I'm getting things adjusted. And then also, I didn't really know how I was going to cut this out. You know, it fits pretty snug, so I made a measurement there. It was about 2.5 inches, and so really you didn't have to follow this line. And you know, I had to cut so much out of it because of the way the bracketry was. I did watch a few videos on it before I had done this, and so as you can see here, I'm cutting really probably 2 inches out of the frame, and then I'm going to weld it solid back in. So I'll let you enjoy this for a moment, and I'll come in with more commentary here in just a moment. Okay, so this passenger side was again the better side, but you see where I'm blowing all this out? It was, I want to tell you, if you are getting into this project, my recommendation to you is to cut a hole in this somewhere and blow that stuff out of there. It was so built up with dirt and mud. I ruined like 3 tips on my plasma cutter, and I thought, man, there just must be some extra reinforcements in there, but it was packed plumb full of like mud and debris. So if you're doing this, or even having somebody do it in your area, warn them, blow that out, because it had a lot of debris in it. And then here I'm just kind of cutting the backside. So the approach I took is I cut out kind of like an L shape, I guess you could say, which, you know, obviously took a little bit more wear and tear on your tools. But I wasn't for sure how much to cut out of that backside. I just really wanted to go around the brackets. If you're doing this on another place, if it was me, I probably wouldn't take as much material out as I did. I mean, it doesn't matter because it's fully braced. But I would probably just get enough to cut out the chunks where the braces are, and then just come in and try to leave as much frame in there as possible, just to have more stability. So at this point, what I'm doing here is trying to get out a exhaust bracket that was in the way, that there's not a mounting place on the new one. And it's really, if you look at my left shoulder, there's another brace, so I didn't even put it back in. So now I'm kind of grinding it off, trying to get a good clean surface to weld to. And again, it don't really matter how smooth this is, because it's covered up with a new rust buster. So it doesn't have to be perfectly straight lines or anything like that. You just want to make sure to leave enough lip to come in there and weld that back up. And so I was rough fitting the rust buster, and when I was doing that, there was a couple brackets there that I was getting, you know, hung up on. So you really need to have both of those areas good and clean, and good and straight and level. And so that's kind of what I was doing here, getting ready to prep and weld this. Now pay attention to when you start welding this, because what you'll get into is where the front bracket, so when you place this where that front bracket is, where the back of the body mounts, you know, you need to make sure that you get this the same on both sides. And so when I was starting this out, you know, I wanted to make sure that I got those the same on both sides. So my recommendation is, this is a good place to measure, find out where it was, maybe on the other side from this, which I'd done all those measurements beforehand. And then here, when I put the new one on, I made sure that they were about 2 inches back from that bracket to really where that L shape is, where that you can see that bolt. So at this point, you know, according to their recommendations, is to weld around the whole thing. And to be honest with you, you cannot weld really adequately, probably, unless you remove the whole body. So I welded as good as I could. And where I did, it was sufficient, because the other one, you know, it was in a lot worse shape, and I welded pretty well at all the safe areas. It's not coming loose. Had good penetration, and so I weld this dude in here at this point, and burnt myself all to pieces. But that's what you get for not wearing welding sleeves. Enjoy. So now basically what I do is come in and shoot it with some Rust-Oleum, I think it was. No, it wasn't Rust-Oleum. I can't remember what brand it was. But anyways, like a undercoat liner type material, and then that kind of finished up that side. Now I'm coming in guns blazing on the driver's side. The really nice thing about this side, to some degree, was that, you know, I had the experience on the other side, and this was the really bad side, and so there was not a lot of meat and material there. So it took me significantly less time than the other side, and you can see, as you see the flash from the TIG welder, it was really not good up in there, and I couldn't see So I had to get me a light to kind of get in there, because on the other side I cut everything from the outside in, but on this side they had gas lines, so you can't see them in the picture, but I'd pulled them loose and wrapped those gas lines as well, the front of the tank, in soaking wet rags. You can see that the water, where the water has dripped, and again, there's not a whole lot of sparks in there, so I felt pretty good. It's kind of an old trick that I learned with doing that. So I brought it down here. I wanted to make sure I had the battery cable loose, but I wanted to make sure it hadn't moved, so I went in and checked it, and it hadn't. So I popped the hood, and just kind of as a reminder before I get back in it this night to go in there and make sure that it was back together, I guess you will, or to not start the vehicle until I had the negative battery cable back on. So as you can see, it took significantly less time. I had a little bit of a trouble getting that on, so I had to lower it back down and start warping it. So I'm going back and forth and just kind of looking at both sides there. I'm going to start welding this in. And I welded about the same on each side. Now, down here around the rear of the cab mount, it was pretty thin, so I had to be pretty selective on where I welded as far as in that area. But as you can tell, I lay a pretty daggum good bead up on both inside and outside. That was really the benefit on this one, is you had a lot more room to make some really pretty welds. You couldn't really see it on the last video there, or the last little section of the video where I was doing the passenger side, but I had to do a lot of the welding on the inside of the frame with my left hand just because I couldn't do it, and that was a little bit of a challenge, but it did work out. So now I went down to eat my supper, and I come back, and it was time for reassembly. So I shot a little paint on it, and I think I took a little break for a second. Yeah, I did. I cut that in the video. And so I come in here and I start working on this thing and putting it back together. And I'm going to tell you, it wasn't too terrible. I had to figure out how to get that rear end up. So what I ended up doing is pulling the four-link forward, or the rear end forward, with a come-along. And so you'll see me in this little section of the video basically just reassembling everything as I took it back apart. I will tell you, one of the bolts, I spent quite a deal of time working on it. And it was actually on the passenger side. It was the top parallel arm for the four-link, and it was a booger. But you can see that come-along works really nice. As you can see, back and forth, you'll see it moving, and it's just for me to come in there, and I have to beat left and right and figure out how in the world did it go in. The driver's side went a lot easier. But again, I started on the passenger for whatever reason. But again, it ends up being, it's like, what tools do you have? And, I do all this stuff by myself. I'm a one-man shop, and, I spend a lot of my time and money investing in good tools. And to be honest with you, this come along, I have used it so much, and it was actually given to me. And boy, it works really good for stuff like this. I don't know how many times I've used this for instances where I've got to pull a rear end forward or backwards. If any of you all are out there that fool with some of these twin I-beam setups, I use them a lot on those to pull and get the bushings out on those forwards. The job was not, again, for the faint-hearted. It was a job, especially doing it by yourself. And obviously, if you're not a professional, and you got to be careful what you're doing. And this, the fuel system and all that, probably the wisest thing, obviously, is to pull the tank. But I didn't. So I've got my ways. I've done it many times, and it's a risk that anybody can take. Don't know if you should. But so again, I wouldn't recommend this for somebody that doesn't know what they're doing. But it can be done, and you know that's the nice thing about Jeeps is you have the accessibility to parts. You can make a lot of things work quick for these things, and you know, like that right there, it would have been untelling how much that would have cost to make all that. You know, that would have been a big job. But the good thing with Jeep is, hey, they've got the stuff already. And so, you know, and it's really, to be honest with you, it's better than it ever was. It's really good shape. I highly recommend doing this repair, and don't be scared to tackle it if you've got these skills. If not, obviously you can give us a call at Champion Garage, and I'll put it in for you. I think these kits, I mean, your cost probably, these kits are somewhere, you know, depending on if you're getting one side, they're about $200 a side, and they go all the way up to the front leaf springs. So there's me working on that one bolt. Boy, I was getting frustrated. It was aggravating. But as I got it in, it wasn't long, and I took this for a drive this night, and got it up to speeds up to 60, 65 miles an hour. Done great. It felt stiffer. Well, and obviously since I've been driving, it had been, you know, pretty rusty, but it really felt good. It had stiffened things up, and I would have no doubt that this would do anyone a good setup. Appreciate you all watching the video, and here's me finishing up with the tires, and there'll be more content like this. If you like this kind of stuff, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and we'll give you some more as time allows. We'll see you guys in the next video.